What is going on, YouTube-iverse? John Stanek from Johnny Radio here, bringing you another Viva La Vinyl classic album review, and it does not get much more classic than this, folks. The 1965 masterpiece, Highway 61 Revisited, by Mr. Bob Dylan. And guys, I'm just going to put it out there. This is my favorite Dylan album, which is really saying something because I follow his entire career. He's been consistently great throughout all 5 decades. Love and Theft being another one of my favorites. Desire from the 70s, just so many great records. But this one, I think a lot of people would agree, is the best. I mean, just the opening single alone, like a Rolling Stone, 6+ minutes of magic. Just the chord progression on this thing, the organ from Al Cooper. No one had ever really heard a song like this before, and it's so cool. The lyrics of this thing, although he uses some metaphors, some imagery, it's very direct, and he's singing to the audience. How does it feel to be on your own like a Rolling Stone? And, you know, he wrote this coming off of trying out some new material out in England, and I don't think this was quite when he was booed and called Judas yet, but people were not responding well to him going electric, which he had already done on half of his prior album, Bringing It All Back Home, which is, let me just stop and say, how many artists can you think of in today's day and age that release not one, but 2 magnificent albums in 1 year? I mean, back in the 60s, artists like Dylan and the Beatles were banging out 2 albums a year of all great quality. It's just mind-blowing. They must have been on some great drugs. I don't know. But anyway, going back to him coming off of that England tour, he was just so kind of angry, I guess, at this fan base that was turning on him, thinking that he should only do folk protest music that they came to love him for. And as soon as he plugs in an electric guitar, he's a Judas. I mean, it's ridiculous. So he wrote down these pages and pages of these seething lyrics, and that turned into Like a Rolling Stone, one of the greatest angry rock songs of all time. And then you've got from there, I want to stop and just point out the title of this album, Highway 61 Revisited. It's literally about Highway 61 in America. There is a highway that goes from north to south through where he was born in Minnesota, all the way down through Mississippi and New Orleans, and where the Delta blues started. So it's kind of like metaphorically saying it's this vein that runs through America that influenced a lot of the songs on this album, because there are a lot of really bluesy tracks on here. The first one, of course, being Tombstone Blues, which it's a very fast, aggressive blues track. There's nothing else sounded like it at the time. And I think Mike Bloomfield's guitar playing adds a major role into this. Mike Bloomfield from the Paul Butterfield Blues Band, one of my favorite records of all time right there. And I think a very underrated guitarist. He adds so much on this song in particular, but throughout the record, very tasteful work by Bloomfield. But lyrically, again, this thing is all over the map. He's citing all these historical references of different people, like from Paul Revere to Jack the Ripper, who sits at the head of the table of commerce. I mean, just these crazy, wild lyrics, and then bringing it back on the chorus saying, Mama's in the factory, she doesn't have any shoes, I'm in the kitchen with the Tombstone Blues. It's just brilliant stuff. And of course, one of my favorite Dylan lyrics of all time, the sun's not yellow, it's chicken, which really, when you think about it, makes absolutely no sense, but it's so awesome. And then, I mean, every song on here, it's almost like a greatest hits collection. You got It Takes a Lot to Laugh, It Takes a Train to Cry, which also has a very bluesy feel, although it's a slower track. And it's got a very nice piano sound in there. It's a good harmonica playing by Bob. He does, later in the album, his harmonica playing is a little high in the mix, specifically on Queen Jane Approximately is one of my lesser favorites on the album. It's still a great song, but the harmonica is like so high in the mix and screechy that it's almost off-putting. And in a way, the more times you hear it, it's got a little bit of a charm to it. But that's really my only quibble with this album as a whole. Other than that, I mean, it's truly brilliant. I mean, you've got Ballad of a Thin Man, which is another one of his best songs of all time. Great piano in this song. It's really menacing, kind of like a Rolling Stone is, sending a similar message at this time at a specific character called Mr. Jones, where the chorus says, "Something is happening and you don't know what it is. Do you, Mr. Jones?" So cool. And just the chord changes on this thing are so awesome. It's haunting and affects you in such a cool way. It's one of my favorite Dylan songs of all time as well. Then you've got From a Buick 6, another upbeat bluesy tune. This one has a really cool bass groove to it. Really weird out there lyrics about this graveyard woman and I need a dump truck to unload my head and like all this crazy stuff. But you know, it's such a fun album for that reason. You know, a lot of people that I guess were expecting that folky, protest, serious music of Dylan's early albums were probably like, what is this? Like, what is he even talking about? But for people that came on board later, like me, that just can go back and look at his work more objectively years after the fact, you've run into this album and you're just like, this thing is amazing. And you can see how it inspired so many other artists after him and at the time. I mean, the Beatles said that this was a huge influence on them, and him specifically, just his presence on them. But I mean, you've got Highway 61 Revisited, just like Tom Thumb's Blues, and of course, Desolation Row, the 11 plus minute only acoustic number on this record, which is just amazing. Of course, lyrically, Bob is in a category of his own. I mean, he may be the greatest music lyricist of all time, and this, of course, has some of the best. So what more can you say about this record other than, I mean, it's totally brilliant. My favorite Dylan album. I would give it a 10 out of 10, except for that little thing I mentioned earlier with the harmonica sometimes hurting my ears. But I give this a strong 9.5 out of 10. You gotta have it. Dylan, baby, he's the greatest. So let me know in the comments below what you think. What are some of your favorite songs? What would you grade this thing? And guys, we got album reviews. We got top fives every Friday. So much more on this channel, where we're always discovering and rediscovering great music. So thank you for watching. And as always, Viva la Vinyl. So guys, thanks so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and be sure to ring the bell for notifications so you can always see great quality content like you're seeing on the screen right now. Thank you so much for supporting Johnny Radio, and I'll see you soon.